wala Pibor, Ping Ping William, Ato in Juba, wala Tori, hey Ambio, Ping Ping William, Ato in Benti, wala Kwaju, hey wow, Ping Ping William, Ato in Malkal, wala Pinyaram, Ping Ping William.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are tuning in. Welcome to Lagos State Media. Today we will touch base the crisis that has happened in Pochalla, and in the studio with us, Mr. Edmund Yakani, CEO of CEPO. Before we dive in, please, our viewers, you share this video, please, to all your followers, such that it will reach out to those who need to hear the truth or what is happening back home. Mr. Edmund Yakani, welcome to Lagos State Media. Once again, I will give you 1 minute to greet the people before we dive into our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Been for a while, we have not been interacting. Of course, other busy schedules have taken much of my time. So today I'll be with you in Lex Media over the issue of Pochalla, and maybe, as you said, we may dive into the speech of the president in the UN Security Council and his reception back home. And I'd like to say hi to everyone, to every viewer of Lex Media. I'm back and I'm joining you today. And I know for a while I've been absent, but of course, I was taken up by a lot of work outside the country in terms of like either working in the States where I have not much time in Juba or traveling out of the country. But otherwise, we'll continue the conversation and of course, we wish peace and stability for our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund. Last week, recently, the time when everybody is focusing to the president visitation or attending the United Nations General Assembly, in the same day or the same time, there are crises that has erupted within the country in Pibor administrative area in Pochalla. What is going on in Pochalla between youth, Anuak youth, and members of the South Sudan Defense Forces? What has really happened?
What has happened is that active military clashes is going on between the armed youth of Anuak in Pochalla County with the leadership of the SSPDF. And of course, this is an effect of things that has happened in the past. And they might have triggered this. Just to share brief literature or brief of history, where does this comes from? And I think this is very important for us to bring the attention of your audience. And of course, I know I may not dive deep into long history. I may just start from somewhere where I feel is factors that might have contributed to the current active clashes between the armed Anuak youth and the SSPDF. If you remember, first, there's one line that I will draw very clear, is that there's almost for 1 class year, a tension is emerging between political opinion of the sons and daughters of Anuak under Pochalla, relations with the leadership of Greater Pibora administrative areas. There's a lot of politics going on there. And of course, these politics are political elites game. There's huge demand of like Pochalla want to separate out of Pibora administrative area. And there's a school of thought, two school of thoughts here. The one school of thought that actually the Anuak want to have their own, so like an administrative area. That's one school of thought. The other school of thought that they want to leave Pibora administrative area and they want to join back Jongole. They want to be part of Jongole state and being a Greater Pibora administrative area. Why is this factor triggered? This factor has triggered questions of they feel that they have been marginalized as sons and daughters of Anuak in Pochalla, and they feel that also access to the administrative unit of Pibora administrative area is very far compared to access for those who have the school thought of returning back to Jongole, compared to the access to Bor. And even some of them that I spoke to them, they say, look here, the development of Pochalla as a county compared to the time when they're under Jongole and compared to the time now when they're under Pibora administrative area is not moving forward or is not accelerating. It means the situation is deteriorating. Of course, these are all political thoughts for political games of specific political individuals. But this has reached to the level of, from that level, the second layer comes now. There were incidents that were registered around armed youth of Murle waging an attack against the Anuak. And this has reached to the level of even one time what do you call, the king of Anuak was under attack of armed youth from Murle, and this is early this year. And these incidents build up, and these incidents keep on repeating itself, no attention, no proper mediation, no proper intervention, though me personally and other colleagues will keep on calling on the power in Juba to intervene on that particular situation, because that particular situation is developing itself to be a political misunderstanding between Anuak County or Anuak area, which is Pochalla County, and versus people administrative areas. So we feel that's tension emerging. And that tension was reflected in some of the behaviors of the political elites in Juba, in terms of event and statements, and even in terms of political structures in Juba. You can see it very clear. But these all were being undermined, no response to it timely, and it keep on growing, keep on devolving, reach to the level of a former SSPDF commander was killed. He's called Konyi Amiti. He was killed. And there's an allegation that he was killed by SSPDF. That's the allegation, which was not investigated. And this is on the 18th of August. So this is of 18th of August, it start annoying the situation getting further. And because of this, there's a former commissioner before the late commissioner who was threatening that his removal from the county, he's not happy with it, and he feels like he should continue the county. And he keep on threatening the commission that comes into power that if this commissioner doesn't step down, he will kill. And later on, it ended up that this commissioner was killed. And the allegation is that there was a joint SSPDF conspiracy with the Murle armed groups killing the former commissioner. And the commissioner was assassinated. But of course, this commissioner was assassinated by his counterpart who have been removed from the power and who established an armed youth group of Anuak. So that particular commissioner have started activating the armed group of Anuak. And this has continuing, and there's a tension merging between the leadership of the SSPDF and the armed group of the Anuak in terms of like really how to manage the affairs of the county. And this have linked to do this of public administration, revenue, a lot of issues associated with that. So this leads to the actual anger of the armed youth of Anuak. On the 19th of August, they wage an attack against the SSPDF. So that still was not properly handled. But on the day when the president was flying, that is where now an official attack from the armed youth of the Anuak against the SSPDF was launched against the barracks, and the SSPDF responded. But remember, when you talk about armed youth in that particular belt of the region, right from Jongole, you continue up to Pibor and then go to Pochalla, they are actually more stronger armed than the SSPDF. So they wage an attack. If the SSPDF did respond, the SSPDF will overrun. So that is the situation happening. So they confronted themselves with the SSPDF, and I think somewhere SSPDF feel that the wage of attack by the Anuak armed youth is getting out of control and even is overrunning them, is somehow like weakening them, and they almost get defeated. Then they have to call for reinforcement. And the reinforcement they call an air force. Yes, it is true that gunship is being used for attacking the Anuak youth. And these have led to death of hundreds of individuals from the armed group of Anuak and also the SSPDF. It's not that only the armed Anuak youth who died, the SSPDF soldiers also died, but also there's issues of human rights atrocities committed in that particular situation. So this is what is going on. So when the president was in New York, it intensified. But after it happened before the president's travel. But one of the observations I have is that Juba is silent over that. There's no condemnation from Juba timely. There's no any strong messaging come from the political leaders of the country. The only thing is that you hear the spokesperson of SSPDF saying, we have clashed with the armed youth of the Anuak, and immediately he rushed and leveled them as rebels. That we have clashed with the rebels and we have used gunship. And of course, the issue of the gunship is also confirmed by SSPDF spokesperson. And that have created a tension among the MPs that represent Anuak in the National Parliament. They raise a lot of motion in the Parliament and saying, no, they're not rebels. It's wrong for SSPDF to level the youth, the armed youth as rebels, because it's not only armed youth of Anuak that have clashed with the army official. There are a lot of cases of armed youth in other parts of the country have clashed with the SSPDF and they're not being labeled as rebels. So they've been labeled as rebels. So the question is, Are we expecting a possible looming revolution in Anuak? For me, if the situation of Anuak continue unresolved and without no any effective intervention of Juba, and remember Pochalla is at the border with Ethiopia, and it's bordering an area of Ethiopia where it also have a problem with the leadership of Ethiopia at the center, and that's Gambela region. And remember, there's Anuak in that Gambela region. There's a likelihood that some individual from the Anuak community may declare a revolution against the SSPDF if this situation continue where they are under attack by SSPDF. So for me, the question is, why is the center of authority in Juba quiet over that? Why there's no proper urgent intervention? Because if you look at this incident, and this is why sometimes someone like me start wondering as an activist, if this situation happened in certain parts of the country, in the second day, you will see a quick intervention and a high-level national political statement being issued, directives have been directed. But now in Pochalla, it's going for almost 2 weeks. The leadership is quiet. There's no any council of ministers resolution over that. The parliament is only MPs that come from Anuak and the ones speaking from Pochalla. The rest are quiet. But if this is supposed to be happen in certain location, you see a quick responses. So the question comes is there any political discriminations against certain ethnic establishment in the country by the center of the power? Those are some of the questions that ones raise logical, because it seems that bell of Greater Pibor, where talk of Murle, talk of Anuak, talk of certain positions, it seems like there's a less political attention and interest in finding amicable solution. But there's certain parts of the country, even if it's only 5 people who are killed in a confrontation between armed youth and SSPDF, you immediately see the center of authorities issue statements and quickly intervention has been called. So that is a dilemma we have now, that actually the situation in Pochalla is unfolding. And if Juba keep on remaining silent without any intervention, there's a likelihood that one son of that area may declare a revolution against SSPDF, and that it means a proper challenge towards the pathway to peace and stability. That is one. Secondly, even if nobody declare revolution, if that tension continue, remember you have hold-out groups, which are armed groups that are not signatories to the revitalized peace agreement. They may take advantage of the Anuak situation and go and recruit and establish their presence there. So some of the groups easily can quickly go there. Specifically, these non-signatory to the revitalized peace agreement that are within the Belt of Unity State and up to Awil, those areas, they may likely take advantage. And even in Jongole, they may easily take advantage of finding a way of how to sneak to that side and then establish, or even establish a communications and then calls and then aid comes. And then that side of Pochalla, control of illegal flow of arms and ammunition down of the civilians is not there, because the Ethiopian government is in crisis. Gambela doesn't have that strong government to monitor the borders in terms of flow of arms and ammunition to the hand of civilians. And Ethiopia is in crisis that you can easily find a market for buying illegal weaponry, being the AK-47 or light weapons and bullets. So for me, that is the disturbing angle that Juba need not to be silent about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund. Yeah, this is the thing that you have mentioned about the looming rebellion, and this is also critical to happen. We have heard some interviews, like former Commander Oyai Deng Ajak interview that he has made has been circulating in the social media here, saying that I will march to Juba with AK-47. And you mentioned something very important here, that some of disadvantaged and those who are not happy with the government and they are roaming out, they may form a collusion with this youth. And this will affect the country, will bring country to war again. And it will the election be possible if the country is back into the active war again?
You know, with the political disagreements, or whenever people are getting political discontented with the political attitudes demonstrated by the leadership under the current government of national unity, if there's no change of political attitudes, as there's no demonstration of political will and political commitment to commit for a genuine transitioning of the situation from violence to peace, that actual act as a very good trigger and motivator for further establishment of revolutions against the leadership at the center of power in Juba, because people will use their deficit in trust and confidence in implement the revitalized peace agreement as a proper foundation of justifying that the leadership that are in power is not interesting to see the country being stable and peaceful, and they're interested in using violence as an instrument of silencing voices, of controlling citizens' influence, of controlling accountability, and manipulating public resources that are aimed to deliver social service to the citizens or development. And that will become the foundation of everybody arguing. And there's a likelihood that when you have pockets of armed groups in the country that are discontented with the country, just they need one person who will trigger a coordination. And already you see coordination has been done. It's not something that you need to think about it. You remember the whole out groups have a sort of like a military joint venture of reaching consensus, besides the disagreements that they have politically when they are under the Rome peace process. They have to split into some are under Thomas Cirillo, some are under Malong, and later on they have to come to Nairobi Malong group and SPLM near Paganamum. Later on they merge and establish what we call the non-signatories coalition, which is also militarily active. They will take advantage of this. And remember, these are individuals who they are almost 50% of the year were on struggling for the independence of South Sudan. So they know what is called bush culture to prepare a pressure armed group towards the center. And as election is looming, there's a high chances that they want to undermine the credibility of the elections, and they may need to put the political legitimacy of the power in Juba into question and into failure by making sure that a slight incident like what happened in Pochalla is taken up serious and become a mobilizer, like an actor that help them to mobilize and to go beyond even Pochalla and use Pochalla as a justification. For political reasons, for political gain, they will act on that. That one, there's no question for you to think about whether they're not going, they will take advantage of that. That's one thing that happened. And of course, this also is being aided by what? This is aided by the demonstration of political indiscipline and political immaturity by the leaders who are under the government of national unity in creating internal crisis, in implementing the agreement, delaying the genuine implementation of the agreement. And this makes some people say, no, I think these particular individuals who are leading power at the center are not interested for successful political transition of the situation from violence to peace. And I'll give an indicator. Look at the passing of the electoral law. The electoral law in the first reading, it doesn't have any provision of 5% for the president. Second reading, it have no provision for the president. It comes to third reading where it is to be passed and which qualifies election. Somebody has to come and sneak a percentage of 5% is given a power to the president to appoint a parliament. Yes, this practice is everywhere. In some countries it's there, but such practice needs to be reached by consensus so that you don't have it to be abused. But you can't come behind the door and through a window you want to put a provision. This is the same like how Article 101 was put by late John Locke. The power of president can dismiss an elected governor. Look what happened later on. The power that president can look at on that particular power led John Locke to be detained, and later on, of course, we didn't respect his life to be in peace in heaven as he lost his life. But look at the Constitution. So if you start using this political game of favoring leadership in order you will have in return to be also favored by sneaking provisions like on the electoral law, and even if you remember, this is not the first time. Also in the budget, there's a tension in the budget. And remember, after the budget, you have the electoral law. Now you have the national security bill. Also, there's a rumors going on that they want to maneuver the national security bill. They don't want the way how it is going to be as a popular. So having consensus in the parliament in first reading and second reading is ethical. In the third reading, you cannot bring a secret provision that you undermine the power of the function of the parliament. And that can annoy a section of political elites, and they can use that as a justification of why you should quit power. Either if you don't quit power through dialogue, you should quit power through the barrel of the gun. So for me, there are few indicators of political attitudes by the politician, the government of national unity, that they need to stop if they don't want revolutions to merge. But as long as they keep on having these political misbehaviors and political indiscipline, political immaturity, people will get fed up and will say, enough is enough. I think they need to go. Because if you keep on sneaking, undermining the power of the function of the parliament in enacting a legislation like the electoral law, and you want to put that power of 5%, it undermines the meaning of why we need to have elections. So for me, these are issues that you need to use consensus as an instrument of having a buy-in. Even you may have a good idea, it may be accepted, because one of the things we've been arguing is that not necessarily this 5% is meant for His Excellency President Salva. What about if Salva failed? Any elected president can use that. So it's targeted towards elected president. But the question is, how can you avoid it being abused? And how can you avoid it not being undermining the concept of why we need to go for elections? Why do you want to bring such power if you're confident? And there's these rumors that some few individuals who fails in the ruling party, if they go for election, they may not succeed. So they want to have a benefit of power that president have for appointing them to the parliament, because it is already an experience when the elections of 2010 was conducted. A renowned parliamentarians were knocked out, and then they become the 66 appointees of the president to a parliament size of 170. Later on, then also appointees from Khartoum Parliament when we got our independence. It expanded the parliament to 332. So for me, these political attitudes of undermining the normal practice of function of the parliament to enact legislation for governance of public affairs, if it keep on continuing, it will annoy it, and it will help some people to be mobilized, because the more you demonstrate political indiscipline and political immaturity, and the more you delay political will because you don't have commitment, you don't take responsibility because of the deficit in trust and confidence, you will likely end up having more revolutions and having more citizens be mobilized during revolutions as a way of securing power from you. And specifically also when you start responding to such situation by making an aggressive restriction of civic and political space so that people does not speak. And when people get fed up of lack of freedom of expression and free press, they will say enough is enough, and everything will end up. So for me, really the ball is in the hand of the leaders in the government of national unity to change their political attitude if they want elections to be held. And part of it is that incidents like what happened in Pochalla need a quick attention. You don't need to be selective in responding to communal violence if you're a political leader at the center of power at central or national level. The more you become selective, the more you're sending signals that you are actually somehow standing with Animal Farm, which says all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And then because you're holding authority and you're holding gun, you are more equal than the rest of the citizens. That become a problem. And in the context of South Sudan, we still have militarized behaviors. So we don't fear getting to the bush. Actually, even we feel getting to the bush is a better solution to our problems rather than sitting on the table of negotiation. And election is looming. So the election going to have it, the credibility is going to be challenged by having armed groups may undermine the elections, and the election may not be viable in terms of voting. You may have a partial elections. And even if you have partial elections, your political attitudes help people to qualify a partial election as credible or not credible. So for me, there's a big responsibility with the incumbent to improve their political attitudes. As you speak now, there's emerging tension even in Malacca. So you see there's emerging tension in Western Equatoria between the speaker and the governor. And if you look at that land, that will take an ethnic line of Ida Zande versus Balanda, because of where there's emerging tension in Western Paragazal. Like almost in every state, there's a tension. You can see right now in Central Equatoria, there's emerging tension between the governor and the Minister of Local Government. And the governor is coming from Yei River State, the Minister of Local Government is coming from Lanya. Likely you may create a tension between Yei and Lanya because two leaders were it ethnic backup. So almost if you see pockets of new emerging tension, it's coming more stronger. And as election is looming, because as election is looming, people are politically positioning themselves. And restriction of political space is getting further and further. And within political parties, there's a lot of disagreement. I will give an example. Some of you might have heard. There was a SOA event, which is taking place in the basketball stadium as a reception of Lamakol coming to Juba. And remember, when Lamakol come to Juba, Lamakol is the Secretary General of the SOA. But look at the way how that event ended. That event, there's a blame which is so much waged against the national security that national security is reaching the space. I was there on the ground. Yes, besides national security, restoring the civic space, but the SOA internal have a crisis. What are the crisis? Is a closing speech. And this is a continual class within SOA. The closing speech of that event, who is to close? Is it Vice President Abdul Bagi Ai, who is like a Vice VP, seeing himself as a senior within the SOA? Or is it the Minister of Agriculture, Josephine Lagu, who is the chair of SOA? Since it's a political event, it's supposed to be Josephine Lagu to close the event, not the Vice President. Yes, the Vice President is a member of SOA, but that is not a government event. So that he used government protocol in dictating SOA political events. SOA political event is dictated by the SOA coalition protocol system, in which Josephine Lagu is supposed to close. And similar thing happened when we're rolling out the roadmap. We have been delayed for almost 2 or 3 hours for SOA to reach consensus. Who will sign on behalf of SOA? Is it VP Abdul Bagi or is it Josephine Lagu? So that class of the parties is even attract national security because each of them was calling national security to undermine the event. So this internal crisis within the political parties, being it in SOA, being it in IO, being it in IG, is going to destabilize the conduct of the elections if the political leadership in Juba does not change their attitudes to respect what we call a democratic rights and democratic practices, that you meet democratic standards from within your system, and then as you are moving towards going to the government. So for me, those are things that need to be put in an order before we go for elections. And partly, as I say, the communal violence is going to expand. The communal violence is going to increase. And even if you see recently in our early warning system as a CEPO, there's an increase of already incidents where civilian population has been targeted. As we speak, in Yei, in a place called Obasi, 7 people were already killed. Between Akobo East and Akobo West, 17 returnees were killed, who were just coming. And forget about incidents where either 2 or 3 were killed in other parts of the country. So if you see the numbers of incidents where civilian population are losing lives, it's increasing. And now, if you have these incidents and election is looming, what does it mean? It gives indicators that there's a likely of forces that will undermine the credibility of the elections. And also, if you who are running the elections start undermining the traditional electoral practices, like as you enacting law of elections, you enact this law in a tension manner, in a conflicting manner. This tells you already even restructuring of the electoral institution and the conduct of the elections are subject for misunderstanding, and that may impress rigging, and that may impress any content of the elections or any player in the election by saying, look here, this is not right, because right from enactment of the law, you start having a dispute before application of the law and before you consider the institutions to administer the law. So there's a lot of credibility. Plus, when you see Chief Justice in WOW during a party campaign, so if add up those things all, they may mount it to indicators that will undermine the elections. And what is the solution? The solution, you need a political attitude change at the center of power in the government of national unity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right from the passing of the bills in the parliament, there is disagreement there among the MPs. Going out to the keynotes the president has given to United Nations General Assembly. He mentioned some key things like he said that election is possible, is going to happen, and also is requesting for the arm embargo to be lifted. And now the country is not settled yet. There are all these things are happening, losing life, and rebellion is looming. What will be the solution to solve the crisis, especially the current one, the hot thing which is happening in Pochalla? What will be the solution?
If we were to go back to our subject in regard to Pochalla actually require a national government intervention, like what has happened in any other parts of the country. The situation of Pochalla require equal response, like when we have the crisis between Twitch and Ngok Dinka. Okay, you need to take that approach. You need to respond to it quickly in the same manner like the way they have responded there. So you can't allow people to lose their lives in that part of the country of Pochalla, and while if you touch certain part of the country quickly. So president need to reconstitute a committee. And of course, we are aware that even these committees of investigation does not produce results. Look at the investigation of Lair, which is a very big investigation, and after that the results are not being disclosed, and people are reserved about disclosing the results, though it leads to some individual being sanctioned, like the commission for that. But of course, we are aware that the report is ready, but there's no political will for the report to be released public, and for those who are involved to be held accountable, because some of them who are involved are close either allies or close at the center of the power. So that particular issue. So it means you need a political responsibility and a political decision from the center of power in Juba that you don't undermine and you don't underrate and you don't be selective, you don't discriminate individuals that are creating incidents that are leading to civilians to lose their lives and properties. And even if they're your close allies, as somebody in a power, you must hold them accountable. That is why you win what we call the public trust on the government, because government loses its public trust when it's becoming selective, discriminative. The government can't really have that public trust. So that's what they need to do, that such incidents need to respond quickly. It's like I speak now, in Ombasi there's a problem, and I think the government of Central Equatoria have traveled already there. There's a likelihood also that may unfold in Yei, and remember, it's close to an area where NAS is very active. You may use that as an excuse to leveling NAS or whatever, while NAS is not part of it. Maybe it's the forces that are involved. And these all issues require political attitude from the center in Juba. So situation is unfolding. The tension that is going on in Western Equatoria require a quick dialogue. You may see it as easy. If come elections, everybody may translate that particular tension to a different thing. As I'm saying, this require proper move and proper urgent intervention by the political leadership in Juba, and that means they need to change their political attitude. That's something fun. And if there's a dialogue, the dialogue has to be a genuine dialogue. It shouldn't be a dialogue for covering up a wound. You need to really have a dialogue that it open up the wound and start looking into the germs in the wound and sort out those germs one by one and find a medicine to those germs. Otherwise, if it's a dialogue of covering up a wound, this wound will merge again towards the day of the either electoral campaign or even the polling day. This wound will merge up. That's one thing that I like to but as I said, Carlos was intentional. That's one thing. Coming to the elections right now, there's two driving factors going on. And these driving factors is simply there's a group of politicians who are not confident. And I'd like to say they're not from one party. They're from all parties. There's this class of politicians who knew that they're so much discontented with their constituencies. They are now politicians on the mercy of the spirit of the agreement. The moment you subject the spirit of the agreement for an elections, for democratic government to be elected by the citizen, they are aware they're not coming back. So what are they doing in the town in Juba? One, they create tensions like what happened with the enactment of the bill, where it leads to tension, to frictions. And if you remember also even indicators that the enactment of the bill on the elections is giving us a clear indicators of like what are the triggers for 2013 crisis and 2016 crisis. Remember, 2013 crisis was a question of should we go for secret ballot or should we go for hand raising? That's the biggest disagreement that lead to us to classes. If you come to 2016, should there be cantonment areas for IO but then before IO before the go, should be there cantonment areas for IO in Equatoria or not? 2016 we clash. Now the question is, should 5% be there or not? And the name of the 5%, you might have seen the response from the SPLM-IO when the first deputy speaker was making a press conference saying, we are so tired, we are fed up, we have been so silent that His Excellency Vice President is under house arrest. He's been denied, and even remember he quoted, he's supposed to go to West Africa, he was denied. He's supposed to go to WOW, he was denied. He's supposed to go to New York besides invitation, he was denied. That particular message is a message that can trigger a return back to war. And remember, His Excellency President say, under his leadership, the country never return back to war. But you have people around him that are actually digging a hole for the country to return back to war by creating these antagonistic statements. But also within the opposition, there are delaying tactics from the opposition. And we see right now, as even if you're going for the unification of the forces, there's still delaying tactics. There's a delaying tactics. So also these particular characters are in the opposition, and they're playing also with the opposition leadership. So the political establishment, name it SPLM, name it SPLM-IO, name it SOWA, the top leadership are hostage to spoilers of a successful political transition from violence to peace. So there's spoilers across the board, and they're holding the leadership so much antagonistic. And actually, they become the best singers. You remember, if we are going back to the Christianity, who is Judas Iscariot? Look at there's so many Judas Iscariot in the political establishment towards the leadership of the country. And they're able to succeed to, and by the way, one of their main objectives is to increase deficit in trust and confidence among the principals in implementing the agreement successfully. So, to His Excellency President, to His Excellency First Vice President, if they don't clear those particular players around them, those players will nurture increase in deficit and trust, and they will hold the country hostage to violence. And they come to realize that they may feel, oh, we are powerful, we have all the arsenals, we can use it. Hey, there's an end for everything. There's an end for everything. And if you're Christians, that particular message of David killing Goliath with all the body weight of Goliath and the weaponry, a single stone, is a very strong message, is a very political message from the Bible to current political leadership, that how much powerful you are, you will fall one day, like Goliath fall. Look at Bashir, where is Sudan now? Look at Libya, where is Gaddafi now? Look at Saddam Hussein, where is Saddam Hussein now? Look at Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Look at what is coming in West Africa. You may have your good bodyguards, they may be with you. When they get fed up, they may be like either Niger, Burkina Faso, or Mali. We may say, oh, Belfam is quiet. Belfam may not be quiet forever. So for me, it's really the current political leadership that have a primary responsibility to create what is called good enough conditions for the conduct of the elections. And you cannot create good enough conditions for the conduct of the elections if deficit in trust and confidence is every day growing. What are the indicators of the growth of deficit? The passage of the electoral bill is clear. Look at now the delay in the reconstitution of the middle command, and already you have had one party saying we are going to redeploy them even if you don't have the middle command, because there's a delay from one party in ensuring in giving list of their names for the structure of the middle command, and they are not brought it in standards. So one of the things that I have as my analogy, prove it me wrong if comes time to December 2024, I feel both parties, the incumbent and the IU, are speaking one language of demanding an extension of the extended period. But the message they're giving us is different. One behaves to be a Catholic, one behaves to be a Protestant. It's just like one is becoming a Shia, one becoming a Sunni. And they're clashing themselves in front of us. But unfortunately, when they're clashing themselves in front of us, they're not losing power, they're controlling power. That's the analogy I want to bring forward. So one will say, yes, we're going for elections. But tactfully, let us delay the reconstitution of the institution that create the conducive environment for elections. What does that mean? That is an extension. Then one say, no, we are not going for election because the preconditions that are required for the elections are not being fulfilled. What does that mean? That means an extension. So let's not get surprised to see the theory of Rwanda. When Kagame term of office constitutional ended, what Kagame did? Kagame came out and say, citizens say they're interested to see me continue ruling Rwanda. But because citizens are interested for that, the only thing I want to offer to citizens as a consensus gaining is for citizens to go for referendum against the constitutional article says that I have only 2 terms of office. If citizens go for referendum and they can vote for me to extend and they can remove that article from the constitution, I have no problem. Then you design your own citizens referendum system and you empower them to just saying, yes, we remove this article out. That has happened in Rwanda. So we are looking likely to have an extension which is called citizen demanded extension, because if we're to go for election now, likely the country will return to violence. It's an extension. Extension is an extension. Failure in implementing an agreement is a clear indicator that there's a deficit in trust and confidence to implement the agreement. And why is deficit in trust and confidence? It means the political will and the commitment and the responsibility of taking a political action to make things turn opposite for the success of the best interest of the nation is very lower than controlling the power to sustain individuals and returning power. These guys in V8, will they go for elections? The motorcade they're enjoying, will it make them go for elections? Reduction of the size of the government by 50%, by the way, 50 or 60%, from 550 to 332, from 100 to 50 at the Council of States, from 100 state MPs to almost 45 or 40 something or 50, from 35 ministers to 15 ministers, from 17 ministers to 9 ministers. Are these guys really, are you sure they are interested to go? And where you're going to go for a voting moment where you don't guarantee whether you're coming back or not. And also you're going to a moment that you're going to go to seek for voting in which you have delivered less services. You know, election is coming. And this is what I was telling some few MPs. I said these MPs allowances that have been given, they thought those allowances are good, they're eating them. But those allowances are going to be very bitter during the elections. 40% for car, 15% for medical allowance, 20%, 20,000. You know, this 40,000 for car, 15,000 for medical allowance, another 20,000 for what? So you have been eating thousands of dollars in the parliament. And you're not getting back to the constituencies. Now time has come. People will tell you, look here, this vote of mine, I'm only good to vote for it to allow you to vomit what you have ate on my behalf in the name of buying a car, in the name of medical allowances. And that vomit, it means you must get out of that house and we're sending our own. That is going to be a problem. And I'll tell you an indicator. If you go to our elections without proper electoral security, elections at states level is going to be more violent compared to electable position in national or central government. The position of the governors is going to be independently contested seriously. The position of state MPs is going to be independently contested seriously. And if the system want to use the state powers to control that voice of the independency, is going to be challenged. So that's why I'm saying we need political attitudes to reduce communal violence. That like what's going on in Pochalla, what's happening in Ye, what's merging on now between leadership, like what's going on between the speaker and the governor, and what's going on between the minister of local government and the governor of central Equatorial State, and you have similar incidents in other parts of the country. That's one thing that you need to take it serious. And the third thing to take serious is that This question of sometimes silence for long, then you come and respond at last minute. The confrontational political attitudes between the SPLM and the SPLM-IU. If you don't bring that to an end, you'll be going for elections that you find the singer is very far, but you want to sing the song and you can't really listen to the singer. The more you're coming closer to the singer, the more the singer is getting far. So you may demand for an elections where voters are not close, voters are getting very far. You want voters, there's no voters, because if you don't have voters, then credibility is not there. Besides technical, logical questions about elections, issue of constitution, you don't have consensus on it. Issue of population census, you don't have consensus on it. Issue of redeployment of unified forces, you don't have a question on it. Issue of open civic and political space. And I've had His Excellency President, when he's addressing the UN Security Council, he have key messages that related to the elections. One, we commit ourselves for peace and stability. Two, we're going to fast track the implementation of the pending task. And that fast tracking, it will be tested from the Council of Ministers this week. What the Council of Ministers is going to discuss. That's one of the biggest problems. Three, His Excellency have said he will make sure that there's a proper coordination with the civil society, faith-based leaders, religious leaders, opposition, while the civic space is not open. The civic space is shrinking, the political space is shrinking. And they tell the international community, I'm going to work with them as players that represent the communities to have credible elections. So now the question comes is, after the speech of His Excellency President in New York, will there be an urgent deployment of unified forces, especially the first graduated batch, which is going for 1 year plus, waiting for redeployment only? And one of the biggest things I would like to bring to your audience about redeployment of the unified forces that I feel is not going to take easy way. Redeployment is being seen from a political angle related to the elections. And I'm quite sure redeployment is going to be problematic. Why? Because political parties are now repositioning themselves for elections. So even redeployment of forces, the politicians will look from a way of how can they use those forces for controlling elections or for rigging elections. So it's not going to be easy, because it's not subject for political electoral-related interests, the redeployment. Reconstitution of the political parties council. And as I speak with you, I'm a member of the stakeholders. We only vetted the members of the political parties council on Friday, last Friday, is when we have the names present to us of those who want to contest for the chairmanship of the political parties council, deputy chair, members of the council. And the names that were brought, we knocked out so many because the law said that they need to be non-partisan. Most of them are brought to us who are partisan. Some of them, you find them, they are either IO, they don't shout Viva in the public, but you see, we have realized that they have t-shirts which are blue of IO hiding somewhere. Some of them are SPLM. You don't see them in the SPLM, and you come and see them. For example, like our brother, just I'm using it for case study with disclaimer of respect. Our brother was caught up in a plane of SPLM IO flying to Wow. You know, he's completely free, but some people want to play around with that. So we have realized there's a party members who are in a secret party colors, but they don't come public. We're able to identify them. And also nominees who are brought by political parties. So we're able to scrutinize, and we only end up having 3 candidates that are qualified for chairman and 1 candidate for deputy, then 7 candidates for the membership of the political parties. And this is yet need to go to parliament this week to be vetted by the parliament in order for president to appoint the political party council. Where is the timeline? We're left with 15 months to conduct the elections. And still the electoral law is not yet into law. The electoral commission is not reconstituted, and we don't have electoral commission that is in function. You need to start the electoral commission, train the staffs and orient them. So for me, honestly, one of the biggest things that I wish His Excellency could have speak into details in the UN Security Council is the electoral process, the commitment to the electoral process. But obviously, the reception was very high. But of course, the reception is by the party, the rest of the country. But the challenge before His Excellency President right now is almost 5 practical indicators that he needs to demonstrate to prove what he tells the Security Council, right? 1, he needs not to delay within the week the reconstitution of the political transitional institution, which are the political parties council, the National Election Commission, because this goes in line with the summary statement of the SRG to the Security Council head of UNIMIS. Redeployment of unified forces, having an open civic and political space, and also putting resources into the political parties council to start rolling out their work, putting resources into the National Election Commission to roll their work, and putting resources into the National Constitutional Review Commission to start rolling out their work, and putting resources in for the deployment of unified forces and rolling out a second batch. So for me, that is the tension. So let us see what will the month of October deliver? The moment the month of October failed to deliver, remember there's another SRG report to the Security Council in October, either mid-October or late October, specifically on the country level of preparation for the elections. The July report of SRG said the country is not ready. August said the country is not ready. September said there's a deficit in trust and confidence. The country is not ready. If October said the country is not ready, in December there's a joint mission, assessment mission of UN Security Council and African peace and security to the country, and they'll come and realize that December the country, that's where they'll make a decision. 12 months towards the date of the voting, they'll say no, South Sudan is not ready for elections. We have a different way of how to look into it, and this is putting legitimacy of the incumbent system into question. And now, if you don't change the political attitudes, actually the game is playing for those who are staying in opposition by saying, look here, there's a lack of political will. They will tell the global community, look, we told you, and you don't respect us, and you can see the failure. Because right now, they already have a case study to justify. You're almost for 3 years, you're unable to deliver what's supposed to be delivered in the first 6 months of your 3 years. So that is the challenge.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund Yakani. We have 3 questions here in the comment section, and I got one person as well in Clubhouse who have a question for you. So let us start with the comment section. We have a question from our brother Daniel Deng. He's asking you, what is the reason of 5% for one party instead of all political parties? That is the first question. Note it down. And the second question came from Victor Makur. He said that then, with given all your analogy, brother Mr. Yakani, can you advise us as ordinary South Sudanese who are sick and tired of this abnormal monster Artugno? That's that thing. Okay. Another question came from John Majuk. He's asking, I would like the moderator in the studio to ask this question on my behalf. The question is, how will the refugees vote? Should there be election in South Sudan? These are 3 questions from the comment section, and we will go to Clubhouse. So answer this first.
Thank you very much. First, the 5%. Let me tell you about the 5% game. I have to be honest. When we are working on the amendment of the electoral law, the system that we have by then in the country is that you have 50% geographical constituency. That's the history that we have in 2010 elections. Then you have 25% as a women list. You have 15%. Okay? So those are the calculations, and then you have 10%. When we are doing the reform of the electoral law, the other 10% have merged into 25%, raised 25% to 35%. So you're left with 15%, which is party list. We pull out 5% for 2% to go to persons with disability, 3% to go for youth direct representation. Initially, we need to be reserved, but the parties refuse. The parties want them to come from political parties. So give that 5%. Then we'll have 10% to political parties. Now, if you are to do mathematics, let me tell you where the 5% was played around. If you're to do mathematics of 332 seats in the parliament, you're going to have 166 seats geographical constituency. This go direct to geographical constituency where you go for direct voting by the citizens, because that's the size of 50% of the 332. Then the rest, you'll subject them to be equated to voting under 35%, under 10%, under 2%, under 5%. So what does that mean? It means likely political parties are going to send their candidates whom they knew that if they parade them to be voted directly in geographical constituency are going to fail, they're going to hide them in those lists of 35%, which is completely women. So there's a lot of men who will lose. Now, there's also a lot of men who will find the 10% as competitive, because we're not going to get it. For example, if the list of 10% composed of 10 people, and the party only get, for example, 7% of the 10, then you need to count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This equals the 5%. The rest below the list is out there. So even the arrangement of the list, who is number 1 in the list, is of interest to any politician who want to come as a weak politician who doesn't want to go to geographic constituency. So, but they realize that there's so many of them that that particular list will not be enough of the 10%. So then these guys say, okay, but there was this dividend that we gained in 2010. And to be with respect, some of the names that we have right now, whether they're in the government or they're in opposition, you know them very well, those names. They contested the elections. They failed badly. You remember, some of these names are known to us. I don't disclose these names here, but some of you in the area, they know it. So those names have to come to politics through appointment of the president. There's 66 appointees, which we call the actual phases of the movement that fail by the vote of the citizen, have to be brought back to politics by the appointment of the president. So that concept of 66, some of them say, my brothers, to be honest with you, if I to temper elections, we're going to fail. The only way is, let's get this 2% of the disability and the 3% of the youth, give it to the president. So what does that mean? It means if you calculate, and by the way, still people see that 5% is healthy. That 5% is not healthy, by the way. It's not healthy. Why? If you calculate 5% of the size of 332 seats in the parliament, you're going to have 17 seats. That means out of 332, if you subtract 17 seats, just let's do mathematics right now. Just let me calculate so that you see how these 17 seats is not equals to the numbers of the people whom we know in the parliament that are not going to find a way to be elected. Our calculation is that in the parliament, we have over 200 MPs who may not find their way to be elected. These 200 MPs are divided to different political parties. And by the way, these 200 MPs, these are people who have sharp appetite to contest. But we know that their sharp appetite will not bring them back to parliament. So they went behind the doors towards the third reading. They say, no, get the 2% of the disability and the 3% of the youth, put them to be prerogatives of the president. But it's only 17. But the losers are going to be over. They may triple 17 seats. So even appointment of the 17 by itself is going to be problematic. Even if you give them for one person as a free cake that you eat it, it's going to find it very hard to eat because there's so many people who will compete of this 17% on regional basis, on friendly basis, on what do you call comradism, in terms of like, you do remember when we were in that particular battle. There's too many, there are more than 17. So it's actually, if it is, it's headache. And now the argument is that this 17% that they create as a 5% that given to the president, these 17 seats, which equals 5% of the 32 which were given to the president, the argument is that this is supposed to appoint professional people, for example, minority. But the question is, the law was not clear. Is this 5% only customized for minority groups? For example, are we looking at groups like Tenant tribe that may be in a constituency? Yes, we have those particular ethnic grouping that even in a big constituency, they can't compete. But you can't leave them out in public governance. You need to bring them in. You may people like professional people who have a very rare field, but you need them in the parliament. They can be appointed by the president. If for example, that's the argument they have on the streets. But what is a guarantee that that is not going to be abused by those who are behind the concept? Because those who are behind the concept of 5% are using it for themselves. And they're using it like, look here, this is it, this is what they're going to do. Besides that, there's oppositions whom are sort of like loyalists or sympathizers of the ruling party, but they can't read the red t-shirt. They're hiding behind the red t-shirt behind there. So they want to use the 5% as a way of coming back. And you can see some of them are endorsing the president already. They have been pushed of the 5%. So this 5% even to the president itself is another tension, but it is not a democratic practice that a legislation in the parliament have reached to its final stage, but a new provision was introduced. And even the provision was introduced without the specialized committee's attention from the chair to its members, but they got themselves, these provisions introduced. So it's going to be problematic. This, and my answer to the question is that this is a game of people who feel they're losers. They need to find a shortcut or a ladder to come back to power. That's why the 5% was introduced. And of course, the 5% would have been a good idea if all political parties reach consensus. By saying, yes, we're going to go for elections, but as we're going for elections, that these particular identities, they may not find their way. As a political parties, by the spirit of the agreement, by consensus, we are pulling out 5% to be given to the president as a prerogative, and this is the way how the president will go. Because it's not necessarily this 5% is for His Excellency President Salva. The question is, what about if President Salva fails and another person comes as a president? He will still abuse this 5%. He will still abuse it. So the question is, when we're not looking from the angle of His Excellency President Salva. No, we're looking at whoever is elected president may abuse this 5% and may bring his friends and his colleagues, because the law is not clear how to abuse it. But secondly, also, why do you want to bring it while the law is going to its final stage? Where were you from the initial stage? That's another contradiction in terms of democratic process in enactment legislation, because people have gone for public hearing. Now you bring a section that was not subject for public hearing for you to get public blessings that there is a good thing. You missed that. So for me, those are the argument of the 5%. It's a tough question. What advice? My advice, honestly, that I would like to raise is that given the political attitudes we have, if we are to be blessed by going for an elections that is free and fair, before we go to the bush, we better use the power of the ballot than the power of the bullet. I'm really somebody who is calling for a peaceful transition of power, but unfortunately, the incumbent system is not really taking that. So for me, my advice will be that non-violently, let's add our voice in creating pressure for the incumbent to allow us to transition from violence to peace in a non-violent manner. But sometimes people are forced to use violence if the incumbent is also becoming more aggressive in a manner that does not want a non-violent movement to tell them how power should end. But obviously, if election is not conducted, the scenario of country return to violence is more higher than this argument of extension. Any attempt for extension is actually calling for more violence. And that's really the equation we need to balance. So my advice is that as a citizens, let's keep on using a non-violent way to tell the system to allow us to transition the power from the current situation to a better with the power of the ballot, not the power of the bullet, because the power of the bullet is very destructive. And you have seen from one of our renowned struggler, veteran, the way he's speaking, it tells you clear level of frustrations. That people now opting that the only way is we have to use the same way how we get our independence, which is very destructive, which is really delaying development in the current stage and losing of lives and properties in something that we don't really need to go for it. So for me, it's an appeal to the incumbent system to change their political attitudes, allow citizens to go for elections without any undermining the principle of free, fair, credible, and peaceful. That's what my advice. Refugees, by the international law, refugees normally vote for, by practice, refugees vote for one seat, which is the presidency. Refugees can't vote for anything. And even before you ask for refugees, ask IDPs. Forget about refugees. IDPs in the country, how will the IDPs vote? There are so many IDPs around Juba. Will they all vote for the constituents of Juba and the constituents are empty? Or will they vote here and then we can count their votes here to their constituencies? These are all technical questions that need to be asked. If you want to have an inclusive, electable government, you need to answer those questions. So for me, it's really a question of, and that's why I was appealing. One of my appeal is that as His Excellency President arrived to the country, there's a need to have a very genuine national roundtable on the fate of the conduct of the election by December 2024, so that there we reach a national ownership in terms of consensus on what we define as a good enough conditions for the conduct of election by December 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund Yakani. Going to Clubhouse, Abraham Adit. We have Mr. Tech Kwaje. You can activate your microphone, and John Garang, just get ready. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac, for allowing me to come up here, and then also thank you, Edmund Yakani, the Executive Director of CEPO, for coming to update about this issue here. Edmund Yakani, I want to ask you one question here, maybe three questions or two questions here. You see, when things happen, like mostly in Equatoria, like when the cattle was killed in Nimule, you see the Minister of Defense, the National Security, Akorkur, the Vice President, the Chief of Staffs, they all went there to see that because of the cattle killed there. Is it, for me, I term the country South Sudan, is it the South Sudan cattle, animals are more better than people or what? Because I see like when the cattle was killed there, all the higher ranking officers, even the Minister of Foreign Affairs went there too. But when people are killed somewhere, like in Kondokoro, people are termed as there's a rebel there. When people are killed sometime in Yei, or there's a rebel there. When the youths get up, and then they term it as a what they call this as a rebel there, so that they can give a chance to SSDF to kill the people. And then also in Anyuag, when you see people are being the youths wake up and then they start fighting with the SSPDF, and then they term it as what they call a rebel, so that they can give impunity, so that they can use any means of their guns. But Edmund Yakani, for example, when the army were killed in Tonch, almost 170 army, why they never termed that as their rebel? They term it as a youth. Why is it like, as you say, is it like more, we're all in animal farm, the more animal is better than the other animal? Because everything that happened in any corner, they term it as a rebel are there, but anything that happened in other areas, there is no term as a what do you call a rebel. What is happening in the country South Sudan then? So, and then another question here also too. So, recently we see the what do you call the commissioner of Lanya, who is a mayor, turn the gun to somebody, and then the MPs all wake up, and then they say this guy must be fired. So, for example, Lul, who is a spokesperson, usually make allegation that these are rebel and then innocent people are killed. Why the MPs never wake up and then so that they can summon this SSDF spokesperson? Because he usually make allegations so that people can be killed. For example, people in Kondokoro are being killed because he make allegation that these are rebel in Kondokoro, and then people are being killed in impunity, and then now also Anyuag rebel, people are being killed. So why this guy never been impeached by the parliament? So why the parliament never come up and then ask someone, the minister, the chief of staff, so that they can explain exactly what is happening? Otherwise, Edmund Yakani see the country is like, as you say, country is for all people, but some people are more important than the other people. And also animals, cows are more important than everything. Thank you, Edmund Yakani.
Thank you so much. Can I allow one more person, Yakani? Yep. John Garang, the time is yours.
Before John Grant came, I would like to direct the guests who are asking the question that please do stick to the topic. We are talking about the situation in Pochalla, what the Nwak community are going through. So if you can base your question regarding to that topic, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. John Grant, the chance is yours. Okay, if John.
Okay, brother Medit, and also to the reg. Hold on a second. I was also engaged in a different conversation, but I am exiting actually because I have a different place to go here. I would like to thank you, the moderators and the panelists who are taking this time to discuss this important topic. It is a regional topic. In my area, as being from Jonglei State, is a regional security-related matters, and is internal security in that context. And with the last speaker, you have touched. Oh, you want to say something, moderator?
No, go ahead.
I think your mic is.
Your mic is open.
Your mic is open. Right.
Yeah, his mic is open because it's connected to the studio.
Okay, great. I got it. The election is happening, and the constituencies all across South Sudan are paying attention. And therefore, there are also underlying issues that face election. And it is very important we, the people of South Sudan, raise our voices for underlying challenges so that they can be solved, such as the consensus issue. It is very important that the consensus is conducted, because what is going to be meaning of roundtable if the roundtable itself is leaving some people behind? There will be left behind, and these left behinds are the people in displaced camps, refugee camps, and IDP as well. And this will not constitute the feasible scales of roundtable being a solution. And this is why it is good to enable bureaucratic system to do their job pacifically. The Bureau of Consensus have to be given resources and tools to conduct their jobs. And the Bureau of Consensus is going to come out with outcoming results that there are 300 or 2 million people in Western world, or 4 million people in that context, maybe about close to 1 million South Sudanese in East Africa, and so many other places. And now, therefore, the candidate and the entire South Sudan political system will ask why. Why are these people still there? That is one. Two, it will also give us a specific data, to be able to answer some other challenges, such as repatriations of the people back to the mainland South Sudan. You can't simply repatriate somebody who had lost majority of their entire belonging and possessions and what make them who they are, and just simply take them back home. Where will be the place called home? These things are all answered by consensus, because the consensus is going to release the data that are going to reflect in financial budget. And when you see, when the South Sudan elite were meeting a few days ago, and they say there is any economical progression conference in South Sudan, I was laughing at them. Because how can you do so when the people are still in refugee camps and so many other places, and the rest are even in the Western world as an asylum? So there is no any strategic answer to all of this, unless or otherwise we enable bureaucracies, and that including the Bureau of Election Consensus, which is actually present. Actually, the last time I checked my reference in data, is already been established in Juba, and it is there. So what next now? It need to be enabled and given resources so that they can also partner with the international observers and the East Africa and the IGAD, so that the election will be free and fair. Because democracy itself is yield to election. It is part of the element on the democracy periodic table blocks. So I encourage extremely strongly. But however, in terms of what is happening in Pochalla, this is exactly what is outlooking toward what is coming in South Sudan. It won't be Pochalla by itself. Very soon it will be in other cities as well, villages and towns. And we already seen it is happening in some places, such as in Tweed-Mayadit and other places, and Ngok area, and some other areas as well in South Sudan, always in Numili and many other places. And we don't want to turn South Sudan as a battleground. And for this reason, this is why our voices indicate a yield to directly office of president. They are not one president. They are office of presidents. And they both work with different interests, such as Mama Rebecca Nyandeng office interest is on humanitarian sessions. And James Wahaniga is operating in what is called internal business. and then so many other different bureaucracies also within the presidencies. So therefore, it is them to do the right thing. We have a nation to look after, republic if we can keep it. So this, it does not include the G10, it does not include the North movement and any other political movement. You know, it includes all of us. And together we make the South Sudan. And if we look to exclude ourselves, then therefore we are calling for war. Because South Sudan is a territorial of tribal integrity. And therefore our agenda of identity of Genovism will lose. And even the profile of things we have in portfolio, such as Jubal Nuba, Abiy, and Blue Niles, are our portfolio, not a Nuak, you know, not Murle or any other person that is doing internal things. If we enable the Bureau of Public Service in policing and investigation department, they can handle this and the nation move forward to democracy and other things. Because we see the war is yelling everywhere in Africa. The war is yelling. You can see it all in your Facebook. You see all these kids are wild everywhere. And this is the interest of some communist political fading individuals. I don't have to mention their name, and you know who I'm talking about. And we don't have to be a communist in that context. We are a democratic society, and our diversity is our beauty. So together we can make South Sudan one beautiful nation again. And I yield it back to you, moderator Medid Majak, that let call for the silence of gun.
Thank you.
In that geographical area.
Thank you so much. Yeah. As Edmund is writing down the questions, those who are in the podium, we have to finish with these three people as well, so that they can answer you all at once. McCartney, the time will be yours, and be brief in your question to the topic as well. While Moranya, get ready, and Yon, welcome, and get ready as well. You will be following one another straight away. Thank you. McCartney, further.
Yes, mine is a brief. I don't lecture. Thank you, Yakini, for coming to the clubhouse and take questions from us. And thanking the moderators and the owner of the room, retired General Madid, and people in the audience. My question is this, Yakini: to what extent do you consider SPLA is a criminal organization responsible for massacring people in Anuak? It is the same questions was asking Ramaphosa in the parliaments when people was massacred in Maragana, the same like Anuak in Maragana. The activists in South Africa never shy, saying Ramaphosa is responsible for massacring of people in Maragana because the police who massacre people is ANC police. And even the soldiers who massacre people in Pochalla are SPLA soldiers. That automatically qualify that SPLA is a criminal organization responsible for the massacring of people in Pochalla. Do you agree or not? Two, to what extent do you accept Equatorial self-determination inevitable, considering the debate of East Africa community try to open consultation on Equatorial self-determination? In your reference, use a Kosovo as a base of your argument because it was supported by European unions and the one of Equatorial going to support by the East Africa community. Thank you.
Yes, Wal Moranya, Fadal.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Greeting to you, the Rocks, Badit, and Comrade Yakani. Thank you once again for coming up into the social media to give us a little bit of a background as to what is going on in Pochalla. Comrade Yakini, on June 8th, 2023, a captain by name Angok Ayuel Deng plus the commissioner of Southern Pochalla or Pochalla South that were killed by the youth who seem to have been sponsored by the local politician who don't approve of the commissioner and they don't approve of the deputy of the Pibor administrative area. Those politicians sponsored these youth to commit the murder that killed the commissioner, that killed the captain of the SSPDF, their bodyguards. They chopped their bodies up in pieces and threw them in water in a river. And so it was assumed that they have actually captured them as POWs, to only later on be disclosed by the King of Anyak that those gentlemen were killed and their bodies were mutilated and thrown in a river. In your comments here, you suggested that the government should do the same modality of a conflict resolution that they have done between the Twitch and the Ngok of ABI. But when you look at the genesis of the conflict in Pochalla, it started as a community versus the government. Compared to what happened in Twitch and Ngok, it started as a community versus a community. So there was a middle ground there in case of Turale and ABI for the government to sit and mediate. But in this case here, it started as an attack on a sitting authority. Where here do you expect the government to come in between here? Or what would be the credibility of the government, which is then seen by the Anya community as an enemy to come in here and mediate in between them? My last question is, now, with these facts here at hand, do you describe what is going on in Pochalla now as a communal violence or as certain disgruntled politician within a Nyak community against the government of South Sudan as well as the local government? I'll stop there, Yakini, and I'll drop myself and listen for your response. Thank you so much, moderators, for giving me the chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Wal. Yon, be brief as well.
I think, Isaac, you can let Yakani answer those questions and then we can move round too. So let the youth and Wilson.
My question will be very brief, yeah.
Okay. Because I see that there's a lot of questions that has been asked and I don't want Yakani to.
If they're brief, let them put it so that I put answers all.
And another those of you ask a question, yes, we will be moving you down. Yeah, go ahead.
We need brief questions now because the time is going on.
Okay, yeah, my question will be brief. So I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank Edmund Yakani for coming up. So my question is regarding, the constitutions that were in operation back in 2010. One of the constitutions that caught my attention was the party list. I think Yakani said, constitute about 35 or 30% of the overall, constitutions back in 2010. So yeah, I want Yakani, to give his opinion about the necessity of party list. So why is it necessary, or why was it included, or what is the importance of party list to be part, of the overall, electoral constituencies? Because we know, the geographical constituencies are themselves, contested by political parties, and then there is this political parties, lists that are part, of the overall electoral constituency. So can you give me your opinion? Is it necessary that we have a party list as part of national constituencies in the parliament? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have one person, Wilson. Do you have a brief question such that we end up here?
No, let him answer. I will have a question and little comment. So let him answer those things and then I will come.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, Edmund, now it will be your turn.
I will not answer them one by one so that also we give time for others to come, but I'll answer them all and respond to some of the questions and put them as together from different. So I will not refer to one by one. One, the concern around protection of civilians, which is actually a primary constitutional responsibility of the government, is under stake or it's really challenged in the country. Why is challenged in the country? Because we have built that culture that when a political leader, when you fail to be part and parcel of the functional authority, the ladder back to power is sponsoring violence to bring you to power. And this goes back to the questions around what's going on in Pochalla, is that there's a politician who is sponsoring violence as an instrument to climb a ladder to power, whether being it in Pochalla or being it between the Ngok and the Twitch, or being in some part of the country. Some of these violence are really sponsored by politicians because they want to get attention of the president so they can get appointed or they can change a power that they feel that power, that particular power. Even violence has been used for changing county commissioners, state governors, even sometimes ministers, and that culture is growing and is getting concrete as a practice that is happening in our communities. That's what I'd like to say. And this has undermined the constitutional obligation of a government to protect civilians. And that's why people are asking these questions. Are humans less than, are animals more better than human, or human are less than animals? Those questions comes forward. And not only here, these questions was asked one time to an SSPDF commander in Kajukeji. Are you a commander to protect other people, or are you here a commander to protect the cattle? When there's tension between pastoralists and farmers in Kajukeji, and the commander say, look here, my responsibility is to protect the lives of human beings. And that's what made the SSPDF to flash out cattle keepers from Kajukeji, because that pressure is coming forward. So for me, it is a question of political responsibility to take constitutional power and protect civilians, because even the use of these cattle is to trigger violence. Some of these cattle are intended to foster political violence rather than really communal violence. So for me, that's one answer that I'd like to put forward of what has happened. In terms of holding political leaders accountable, like what happened with the mayor, of course, what happened with the mayor is really a bad thing, that as a leader, you carry on a gun and you slap a woman who is trying to, yes, she may not be respecting the law, she may be in conflict with the law, but you have a better way to manage it rather than really using it as if we're still in unseen stage. And that's what resulted. And that's why when Lulwai went on and saying they have used gunship for attacking rebels in Pochalla area, the MPs that come from Pochalla immediately raised a motion in the parliament. So a motion was raised in the parliament against the statement made by Lurai, who is an official spokesperson of South Sudan People's Defense Force. So there's argument around that, like, look here, that is not right, because you can't rush and level this particular youth as rebels. Yes, you may use discontented politicians. As I said, there's a politician who is sponsoring violence. And you can see clearly the state of Anuak is actually started. And the last caller saying it is a community waging an aggression against a government. But this is a different level. The original level that we have, I've been going to that area. I've been going to Pibora himself area. I've been going to Pochalla regularly. What is coming out very clear is that there's a discontented attitude from Pochalla towards Pibora himself areas. And if you remember, there was incidents before this incident to the caller where even the Anuak king life was under threat if all follow. And who are people who threaten that? It's first it started as a community to community. And that has grown to the level now, it started building political interest of controlling political power in the territory where the violence happened. That's why the seat of the commissioners have become contested in Pochalla. And particular, as he said, particular discontented politician does not want the replacement of the commissioner. And that's why the new incoming commissioner, they have to threaten his life. And that's why I say even the previous commissioner who was in power should be accused of mobilizing the youth where it resulted in the assassination of the commissioner, and then the SSPDF commander, and even Office of National Security was killed there. Director of National Security was killed in that particular team, and as he said, their body was badly humiliated. Then it was dumped into the bush, and which is completely a human rights violation. But this does not qualify a sitting government to use aggressive and excessive power of using a gunship against its own citizens. The question comes is this the first incident where SSPDF is confronting with armed youth? No. There are several incidents similar like that. Gunships were not used. Why particularly this one gunship is used? That's a logical question. Because we have similar incident happened. That confrontation has happened. And we start asking, why is it happening now? So yes, I know you may say there may be discontented politicians who are trying to establish a revolutionary movement, but also the way how you respond to it as you level them armed to youth. Because the first language came is armed to youth. Nobody have declared revolution there. Now later on it converted, when the gunship was used, it converted into rebels, a leveling of rebels. So for me, it's the approach that we take. And that's why I'm saying we could have not reached what is going on now in Pochalla if the political leadership in Juba are sensitive. I will tell you, my brothers and sisters who are listening here, I was a local mediator in those crises. I was in Twitch, I was in Pibor, I was in Pochalla. We can see things merging, and some of you have been following me closely. I like to issue even sometimes statements from the hotspots, not from Juba. And sometimes I speak from Pochalla, I speak from people of what I've seen on the ground. So for me, it's just lack of timely response to an early warning that is merging. And we have the early warning very clear. We could have not reached to this level if we would have responded to that early warning. That's my response to it. Question about the Equatoria. I know this question where the origin is coming from. The reality is we need to question ourselves. Are we so weak that we can't question authority in power? Or are we feeling that secession is an option? Yes, normally secession is an option, like our secession from Sudan was an option after several attempts have been done. And of course, also, when you sit in power and you're not responding to the concern of citizens, and if you start entertaining a selective way of doing things, that's why people start thinking options of secession. But I'm somebody who believes that whether we like it or we don't like it, the current politicians in the system need to change their political attitudes and their political practices, because the interest of the country is more important than they saving their personal interest. And they're not for power forever. Nature calls can take them. But what legacy do you want to leave behind? If you start beating your chest, what legacy do you want to leave behind? I don't think there's any politician whose legacy need to be associated with fostering violence than bringing people together. You see, so for me, this is one of the biggest things that is going to challenge us. And that's why I had to believe that still we have South Sudanese who love the South Sudan that we want. And once they come to power, we'll have the South Sudan we want. My main concern is that, I'm sorry to use this word, it may sound as an aggressive word. I really, if it's bad received by people, I don't intend it to create anything that may mount it to a hate speech or may mount it as hostile propaganda. But I would like to say there's generations that have believed on ethnicity more than national identity. They believe saving ethnic interests is more important than saving a national interest. And I will tell you this is very clear in some of the ministries. You can go to a ministry as a national, you sit, somebody will not feel that you are a national from a different ethnic setting, but they won't use the ethnic language, and you become suspicious. Even if you're talking good things, you're talking like, look here, we need to bring honey to this country and all this. But because they speak in the ethnic language, you become suspicious that they're talking about you. So you remain uncomfortable. You don't feel accommodated, you don't feel inclusive. And it's not one ethnic group, it's almost. I will tell you these 35 ministries that are in Juba are 35 representatives of ethnic grouping. You visit these 35 ministers, they're not all from one particular ethnic community, but you visit them. Once you visit them, you find them, most of them speaking almost the same language. And you start asking yourself, what's going on? If you can allow me only a minute, my battery is running low, let me connect to power, I'm coming back. Just let me mute myself. Give me less than a minute.
All right.
Okay. So while we're waiting for Yakani to charge his phone, I would like those of you down there, I think we need one more person if you want to turn up the hands. If you want to be brought up, please write a comment then and I will bring you up. But I will not.
I'm back.
Because we need to make sure the question should be 3 questions and then he can answer them.
Okay.
So if you want to come up,
Yakani is
just
back.
write the comment there.
I'm back. Can I continue?
Okay.
Yes, continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm back. Can I continue?
Yes, you go. You continue. You can't hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nationalist. Yes, I'm getting you. Yes. For me, my message is that we should stand up as a nationalist. We shouldn't give them any excuse.
You have network issue, Edmund Yakani. You're coming distorted. Can you check your Wi-Fi? We can't hear you.
Let me ask. So am I clear now?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
So I would like to say we need to stand up as a nationalist to protect politicians who like to use ethnic ticket to control power and loot resources. We still have the opportunity to stand up. And I believe that if we put our tribes and our ethnic identity behind, we can fix this country. The way we struggled for our independence, it was by taking a national responsibility. Look here, ethnicity is not anything. So there is tendency of individuals who, once they sit on a power, they claim they represent themselves, even in several meetings in Juba. Someone's appointed by presidential decree, he goes quiet, he enjoys himself the V8s, he eat well, he looted, he buy houses. The moment is out of is because some people are against us as a community. That's why I was removed. So when you're eating, you're alone. You're buying the houses, you're alone. You're flying your children, you're alone. You're saving accounts, you're alone. We're not community. But today we're out of power. You want to become a community. These are the attitudes we need to challenge. So we should not have affiliation to ethnicity. We must stand up and tell this guy. So this question of us pushing like as if, we can go. Let me tell you, this is my belief. The culture of secession within South Sudan, it will continue from a nation to a region. Let me give an example. Recently, there's this what I can call it as a smart game, but not a real game, not in line with their party basic principles. When the rest of the other level of the government, of the party, try to do the same, happened. Even in one state, counters are now dividing themselves on who should represent them as a flag bearer of one party. So these are the culture of the system. So for me, it's really a question of questioning leadership in the power in Juba, that change your political attitudes, stand up for the nation, and leave your cliques. And unfortunately, it's a group of 5 or 6 people who have captured the center of the power around the president and the first vice president. And there's our vice presidents. So should we give up because of these people? That's really my response, is that we should keep on challenging them. We should allow this nation to be have.
I think the network Shabaka Juba has come up again. It's coming cutting, and I don't think for those who are in the clubhouse as well who want to ask him a question before, I don't know whether this will work. You need to be very brief and quick. I think he might fall off. He's freezing. Edmund Yakani, can you hear me? It has frozen. All right. I'm sorry. Edmund has frozen and he fall off. He ran out of MPs, or the network has gone. It's not working well. So in the clubhouse, I think we might be coming to an end of the show. We will find another time to bring him. You may reserve.
He will be back. Give us, Isaac, give
Yes.
him 1 minute. He will be back.
All right.
Yeah, he will come back. So he just want to check his connection.
Yeah, it's coming. Hello, Edmund. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it's still distorted. It's cutting. Go ahead. Hello?
Yeah.
What's going on, Edmund? It's always once the person is live for more than 1 hour and a half, the network challenges will pop up straight away. It's something that we have been observing if we are hosting people from Juba in South Sudan. So I think it will be difficult for him going out and coming in. Let's wait again and see whether he will come back again. He fall off.
Okay, Isaac.
Yeah.
You can close the. You can close the. Wait for a second. Let us give the chance to Jamus, Wilson left, and Nomdongnial, if they have comment regarding about the situation going on in Pochalla. They can just go ahead and speak while we're waiting for Yakani to come back.
Yeah, he has come back and is still saying your device not connected to microphone. I'm still waiting to get clear and see whether it will be okay. Hello, Edmund, can you hear me? Hello. Hello, hello. Yakani, can you hear us? Hello. I think it will not work. If you can hear me, you can just give your last shot for the closing, and then we may organize another time to come in or drop off. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys. In the clubhouse, I would like Jamus to give us your prospect view about what the incident that has happened in Pochalla, and we just wait your comments. You will hold back with your questions, I think, or you can just say it here. And after that, I will close the show officially, such that those who are in the Facebook and YouTube, they will listen to your voice. So, Fadal.
Yeah, thank you, The Rock and Camera Merit. I would also like to thank the Lagos State media for hosting a show, and I would like also to thank the listeners as well. I would like to thank my brother, Comrade Banyual Moranyar, for his input as well. My question, or what I wanted to say, actually, I wanted to ask Mr. Edmund, but obviously he have a network issue. So I believe that the network even probably have a life of its own to detect who is having a special issue with the government and behave that way. But very unfortunate for the way things are going regarding the situation within our country. Now, with the Pochalla issue, and I've heard Mr. Edmund was saying a while ago that also the some part of the Equatorial region whereby the cattle herders or the civilian that need to be protected from the cattle herders. And what I wanted to say is that the Constitution of South Sudan that he's asking for, that the Constitution should protect the people of the region, the same Constitution also guaranteed freedom of movement to those cattle herders in its nature. That is no question. Should the government use a lethal force to protect the people in those Equatorial region, even if it means that the other cattle herders will be harmed by the government, if the people retaliate by fear force towards the government, should the government retaliate and execute such a lethal force on those cattle herders, would that be a justified means? I would love to ask Mr. Edmund that question, since he referring to the government to use the Constitution to protect those people. If that is the case, then if the answer is yes, then why do we blame the government if the government take an action against people who terrorize a civilian? What is the use of government? The government is useless if the government cannot use its own state power to protect the people, even if the government have to actually use a lethal force against an armed group who are actually causing havoc in the region. You see, this is being biased. This is being a double standard here. It seems like those people have a special interest, and their interest is to sabotage the image of the government.
Jamus, for your information, Edmund has come back. Yeah, just be brief in your question now.
Yes, Mr. Edmund, thank you for coming back. My question to you is that it seems you are more concerned about the people and the violence going on in Pochalla, and you are concerned about the cattle herders interference or coming in contact with the people in certain regions in Equatoria. And as you are elaborating that the government should use the Constitution to protect the people in the region or in the Equatoria region, should the government use a lethal force to protect the people in the region against the cattle herders? My question to you, why it seems that you are okay to ask the government to use the Constitution when the Constitution gives the government a full rights and to execute the power of the state, even if it means to use a lethal force to end the life of those who causing harm to anybody in that context. Why is it okay for you that you want government to use a constitution that gives the president a power to execute judgment that fit to resolve the issue or to bring order in the area? When it's used against other people, such as Pochalla incident, it is a problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me, am I clear?
Yes, you are loud and clear. And I have one person as well, Dongnyal, if you could have add in, such that you wrap them up all before you are interrupted again by the internet. Dongnyal, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Aidan. I am here. Yeah, thank you, Aidan. And thank you, Madin Mijab and Jamut and myself. You know, thank God, Yakani, you came back. But I was wondering that to throw in my question or to talk without you here. But I will not be going around it. I have to ask you straight to the question. You know, it not be too far to what comment I have put it down there before. I have to ask you, Yakani, as you are an activist of Junub Sudan, okay? Mm-hmm. And I understand there is a lot of egos going on over there, but I don't want to talk about them right now. Mm-hmm. So, do you, like you are an activist, actually, do you believe or do you understand when you came out to again what is going on in Pochalla? Did you find out what were the root causes and what was happening before you came out to add whatever you want to say as you are like you are activist? So do you know exactly what was happening there or not? That's what I want to know from you before we say a lot of things. You know, sometimes we be rushing. That's what I tell you, that there is a lot of egos over there. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to talk about it. You are someone who have a special business that to just to stay with that. So do you know exactly what was happening in Pochalla or not? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Namdongnyal. I think you came a bit late, and the briefing here has started anyway. Yakani, you will pick up from there.
So should I continue?
Yes, go ahead.
First, I'd like to make a disclaimer. I'm now using my phone because it seems the modem is not responding effectively, and I would like to take opportunity of a dialogue with brothers and sisters out there so that we reach some consensus. So my phone might be disturbing you in terms of images behind. No worry. But this is my answer. My answer first, I would like to bail on the questions that I left behind, and maybe let me start with this one, then I can go back to an answered question. First, any government who is a sitting government have a responsibility to respond to any threat that is posted towards peace and stability and towards a growth or development of the state. But when you respond responsibly. The question that normally I like to raise to my brother who asked the last is that when I'm speaking with you, I'm not speaking with you with the secondary information. I speak with you with my own primary information of what I've seen. I have seen the incident going on in Pochalla has happened somewhere, but no gunships was used. And this also responds to the other caller before him. Why now in Pochalla there's gunships being used? Look at the incident in Nimule, were there gunships used? No. But why now we're using gunships in Pochalla? Look at the incidents. If some people are saying the incidents between the Ngok and the Twitch have not been against the state, there were incidents against the state in that particular triangle. Look at the incidents happening in Tonch, where the SSPDF went and the SSPDF found themselves confronted by the youth in Tonch. There are no gunships used. So why are we using gunships in this situation? And as some people have said before, when some armed youth are confronting the SSPDF somewhere, they will call rebels, somebody they will call as armed community groups. So that selective attitude is what we have been fighting for, that we need to avoid being selective to national issues. If we're responding to national issues, we should respond equally without any form of selectivity or discrimination. I have no an agenda. That's what I'd like to mention to those who are saying. Secondly, when you want to challenge me when I'm speaking, I have my own primary source. I'm somebody who's been on the ground. Leave me about Pochalla. I can go up to area like Nanam. Because I'm an activist, I want to have my own primary information. But the whole thing going on in Pochalla is a political discontented positions among the political elites of Pochalla versus people at the administrative area, the way how they want to be governed. And that's what led to the former commissioner to get discontented and assassination of a commissioner, attack of the king of Anuak. We have seen those incidents going on. So I'm not somebody who's speaking from a secondary data. For your listeners, I like to tell them, if you want to challenge me, if you want to feel that I'm speaking from secondary, no, I have been on the ground and I know what is happening. And I do speak to people who are on the ground, and I do reach out to even these ringleaders of the armed groups. I always tell them, this is not the way how you should resolve. That's why I went on air saying dialogue is the best way to manage any discontented positions or grievances, whether from the youth or from the SSPDF. Because I know these are manipulations of politicians who might have lost power and don't come back to power by using violence. And it's almost everywhere in the society of South Sudan now. Some few politicians, because also the system have rewarded people who use violence to get power. If you don't reward people who wage as such, nobody will go for violence, but people have been rewarded. The more you go for violence, you are rewarded. You're given rank, you're entertained, you're being bought off by millions of dollars. And you're given special attention, special protection. So everybody don't use violence as a way of buying that privilege. So if you're buying privileges through violence, that's the direction I'd like to respond to some of the callers that I'd like to bring to attention. But as I said before, before I go off, I say, I don't believe we should entertain the behaviors of the current leaders as a way of allowing us to lose our nation. No. We should challenge them, and we should stand before them, and we should tell them what they're doing is wrong. And if telling them what they're doing is wrong can claim our lives, is much more better than clapping for them and while the nation is going wrong. That's something I'd like to bring forward with the previous question that we asked about whether we go for secession or not secession. For me, let us face the reality. Let us face the leaders. The nation is much more important than the individual interests of these particular individuals. Let's be nationalistic. Coming to the question of the party list. Party list in terms of electoral processes, it is a system of what we call proportional representation. Proportional representation in any electoral process is meant to instill a culture where powerful parties does not dominate electoral results, because powerful party can use money to run away with constituencies. You go for constituency voting system, but proportional representation can even give the minority parties or new merging parties an opportunity to go to the parliament because we're voting for party lists. So it's another principle of not allowing the winner to take all, not allowing the powerful one to dominate. It's a good system of the party list because it's a proportional representation that give a chance for weaker parties and for smaller parties to find their way to the government. And because if they go to the government, then they constitute the group of the minority, and they can challenge the dominant party in terms of running the public affairs. Is a good one. But giving an appointing authority to undermine power of elections is a problem. And that's why the 5% is a problem. But party list is not really a big issue. Party list is actually a good practice that you give chance for smaller parties to find a way of having represented the government, and also you challenge anybody who is dominant not to run with the electoral process for all. And the winner never takes all. That's why you have some parties may come through the women list, some parties may come through the party list, some party may come through, if we're supposed to have the disability list or the youth list. But there may be smaller party and new upcoming party. But once they go to the parliament, they're no longer party. They have a voice. 2 or 3 people in the parliament have a voice. Look at the way how Julius Malema built up the parliament in South Africa. Look at then when Bob Wine was in the parliament, before we got out of the parliament. So we have 3 or 4 people can make a difference. Look at before Odigo Newton, how he managed when he was in opposition. So for me, these are all systems that does not allow a ruling party or a dominant party to run with the power and does not allow the winner takes it all. That's some of the things that I'd like to say as a result of the party list that come forward. So I'd like to say that's the belief of the party list. But in terms of the response of SSPDF to the situation in Pochalla, it is more excessive and it's more aggressive compared to other situations. And I'm not speaking from anywhere. I'm speaking within the society I'm in. I have access, I have contacts, I've been on the ground. And another thing is also say that I'm leading an organization that have presence in those locations. So I'm not completely ignorant. And the reality is that sometimes political decisions are more selective in preventing communal violence. And that is what we want to tell our leaders. Don't be selective. Treat the country equally. In some parts of the country, a small incident, you see aggressive response. In some countries, take them time to respond. And that's what we see. That's a selective way. Even the response should not be selective. So that's what I'd like to say with regards to the question of what's going on. Is there a looming revolution in Pochalla or not? It depends on how we manage the situation. We can manage the situation by reducing revolution. We can manage the situation by also making people to rebel. And remember, it's in a very terrible border. It's in a very risky border. That border, Ethiopia is in crisis. Gambela region is in crisis with the power in Ethiopia. We can find easily smuggle of arms and flow of arms. That's why we say dialogue is the best way than using an excessive power with regards to the question of use of government, whether its credibility is credible, it's not credible or not that. And even when I refer to the Constitution have a Bill of Rights. If a Constitution doesn't have a Bill of Rights, then you can say the Constitution is absolute. But there's a Bill of Rights in the Constitution that oblige the government to respect rights. And one of the things is right to life, equal treatment by the law. So those are all the things that I'd like to respond to it. In terms of the population census, I know somebody mean population census, but use population consensus. But all this explanation is referring to population census. Yes, population census are very important. But there's a debate going on whether we have population census with displacement counted to the area where they're displaced to, or population census will be done, this question. And there's people who are very well versed with electoral process that are able to prove that you can conduct elections without population census. But of course, population census agreement is a prerequisite for the conduct of election. Constitution to be made is a prerequisite. But where is the middle ground if you have a high deficit in trust and confidence of a political elite that are not ready to hand over power through electoral process by manipulating the implementation of the peace agreement so that they use the implementation of the peace agreement as an instrument of retaining power? So for me, I would like to say, let us be honest, let us be genuine, and whenever we speak, the nation should be the best instrument that we all want to protect. Our aim is to stand with the country that we're all equal and we don't discriminate each other. So that's really my appeal. That's my call. And I'm not speaking from anywhere. I'm speaking from the ground. I can see arrival of people who are wounded, people who are dead. You can see them. And it's real painful. But if you are far from the reality, you can raise an argument. And of course, as a culture of democracy, we respect your opinion. But also your opinion is subject, like mine, is subject for analysis, is subject for questioning, is subject for scrutiny, is subject also to be adjusted, so also I build a proper census. So for me, the situation is unacceptable in Pochalla. We don't advocate for citizens to rebel against the system, but also we say let the system, if I respond directly. And as I said several times, the early warning of Pochalla was very early. I was on the ground as a local mediator. And I was used by UNIMIS to be a local mediator. And I alerted, I raised it several times, and not me alone. Religious leaders have raised it. But there's a deaf ear to that, and that's why today we're facing the same situation. Even the situation in Nimule that has happened before, or the situation in Twitch, between the Twitch and the Ngok, there's always an early warning system. But there's a selective way of responding to the alerts that come from early warning system. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani. You came back with a small phone and your response. We appreciate your time with us. In the clubhouse, Abra Madit, I think you can just carry on with the clubhouse while we will be releasing the parting shot. Your last comments, Yakani, we will leave you and then we will close the show. So go ahead, your final remarks, and then we close.
My final remarks is that we can't build a nation without a dialogue. We can't build a nation without argument. Argument, dialogue, raising an opinion, expressing an opinion is an instrument of building the best nation we want, the South Sudan that we want. We should continue these dialogues. Let's not stop it. And let's not be so like feeling injured or targeted by any opinion of any person. This is the way how the nation is built. A nation is built through dialogue. So we need to talk to each other. And if you look at history of all nations, they're built through arguments, through challenging the system. And challenging the system does not mean rebelling against the system. Extend the system, use the best way that we think can accommodate all of us. So for me, that's the belief. And I keep on using that. Let us use all platforms that we can interact, we can dialogue. There's nothing platform that is a bad platform. All platforms offers an opportunity that we argue. It is depend on the way how our attitudes when we're using the argument look like. But my appeal to every South Sudanese, wherever you are, is stand for the best governance in South Sudan and stand for the South Sudan that we have lost millions of lives since 1947 or since 1955. Since 1947, 55 incidents, 1983, and other incidents that all of us were struggling to have a country called the Republic of South Sudan that takes us all, and not a selective system of responding or a discriminative system of responding where we're treated all equally by the law, by the constitution, by political decisions. Otherwise, one day, one time, we'll all jubilate when we have the South Sudan we want and when we get blessed. I have not much to say. Just like to say, let us take responsibility to build the state of South Sudan we want as an inclusive, not ethnic dominance, not ethnic having affiliations, but we believe at ourselves based on our merits. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, and thanks all the audience in the YouTube and Facebook. And
Isaac, before Yakani go, can you give a chance person, please? Who this guy, Nyanga? Who is this guy? I don't know.
who is that?
I don't know that guy, so I moved him down. So I didn't bring him up. I don't know how he get up there. Wilson, go ahead. Wilson Thanakur, can you hear me?
I'm a bit sorry. I was far away with phone. Just give the next person I come up to. I'm in Gati station here.
Okay. So Isaac, can you go ahead and close down the is Edmund still there or he left?
Yeah, he's still here.
I'm still around.
Okay, we have two people. Let us give a crutch. Let us give
All
a
right.
crutch.
If he's still there, let me jump in. Yeah, this is Wilson. I mean, how you call his name? Edmund or Edmund?
Edmund Yakani.
Edmund, I welcome back.
Guys. Can you give me a chance, Carlo?
Well, welcome back again to the Lake State Media. Thank
Carlo,
you,
Carlo.
Carlo Holland.
Who brought this guy?
And Rock, I give you thanks. I dropped down myself without knowing. This system is bad. When you try to touch something like that, you go down automatically. So I would be writing a lot of comment, but I know you guys were busy not seeing the people hand. You know, this issue of Pochalla, thank you for the way you using your word wisely, Edmund. You're using suspect, you're using the word suspect, and you're using accusation, which is the term that we should use. You know, the case of Pochalla, to me, is very complicated, but you mentioned some of them. One of the issue is something to do with Pittsburgh administration. There is a politics going on there. There are people who want to go back, like you mentioned, they want to go back to Pochalla. And there are people, they don't want to go back. There is a politics there. And then when you look to the written things, there was a former commissioner who was relieved before, having interest to coming in, but he's using another politic to kick out the current guy. And then also you can see where the army involved in. The guy who was in charge, he was relieved into army. They want to take him to another places, and he refused. So when you combine all the three, plus there is accusation seen last year up to this year, there is a rebellion recruitment going on, which some of you may be aware, some are not. It makes the case very complicated. Now, when army come into, like Wal said before, Jama, I feel sometimes like we are promoting our country to be more violent and try to put our youth into chaos and fight with the government. And I see in that case we're not going to go nowhere. When a civilian encourage another civilian to do confrontation with the government, even though we know that there is a mistake has been made. Now, if it is in case of Dabede that has been tried to be relocated to some other area in the military, and he refusing and saying that he resigned, that kind of language in anywhere in the world is not there in the army. So it's very complicated, but here in our side, we jump in. Some of us take a tribal tune to talk about it, like the way you comparing before with the case of what happened in some other area with what happened in Pochalla. Why the government is not acting. To me, I have different way of seeing it. First, I mentioned there is a local polity within the county level. There is another politic within the administration level. And then there is a little bit of rebellion going on. Plus the general who refused not to be relocated. Now, if the youth came in, who brought the youth in to attack and try to overrun the barrack? That's the problem here. For Yahwana, I am really sorry, and my heart condolences go to the both sides, those army who were killed. Now, come to the case of Pochalla, for those of you who never been in that area. To compare it with the twin incident, there was almost over 100 youths killed in Tony when they tried to overrun. They overran the police, and then they tried to go to the army. In a Tony area, there is the capability, the Dababad and Arabat, they were running with a different season. Now, in case of Pochalla, Shartisa, there is nowhere that you can bring reinforcement to rescue the people who are hostage or overrun by the youth. Because that area, seen the capture of Jalabat, if we defeat Jalaba in that area, they cannot reach Malakal, they cannot reach Akoba, if it is the rain season. This is exactly what is happening now. The youth who came on foot, they can finish those army over there. Mafia Harabia, there is no road from Pochalla to Bor, from Pochalla to Akoba. There are so many mainstream rivers in this time. Long grass is up there. You cannot bring the army to do reinforcement. You can do it through the airlifted and through the air bomb to rescue the people who are overrun. Now, and I can see the tribal language, because what happened in Tony was overwhelmingly killing a lot of civilians with the tanks were used against them, because that environment, there were road and was the dry season, give the army mobility to deal with the youth in Tony. There were a lot of them killed, and they killed general, like what happened in case in Pochalla. But now when people are taking it, it looked like Pochalla case was another special, but they don't see the local politics or administration politics are involved. So it is too early. Even you may find some people who have a political interest in that area or that county later, they will side with the government if we go deep. So in that case, I think South Sudanese, we need to come down. In anywhere, even in the United States here, if just one person become more threat, they will bring helicopter, they will bring a squad, they will bring the tanks or police in that area if it is needed. Here in the world that we are talking, in the world of democracy. But when it comes to case of South Sudan, we are the one who destroying not to have a system or not to have a law enforcement, because we act tribally and we try to demoralize the government not to act. In that case, some community are going to pay the challenge. Now, you talk about, people are talking about the language, even the ministers. Now, my question to you, the way you are seeing us talking outside here, including our own opposition who are not in the country, the way they are talking now, do they have a different with people who are now, some ministers that you mentioned, they talk a tribal language. But if you see the opposition language here in our side, are they equal or are they different? Because to me, as a citizen, the way opposition are talking here, there are more groups who are using a tribal ticket to divide people more, to get chaos. So again, that's my question. You need to be, I need to be answered later if you are still there. Again, to me, the case of Pochalla is very complicated. It's very complicated. But when a thing comes to overrun the government have all means. Helicopter gunship, even here in the Western world, when there is the hostage, when there are forces ran over, they will even send more than 5 helicopters. Some of them will be burned down by enemy, and some they will go to do rescue. In that question, I see it's too early now to act. In case of Abia, is community with community. I think if government can go, they can go. Now, in this case of Pochalla, it is government with the youth who are against the government. Only the government will cool it down if they secure their own military barracks and they secure their own wounded people or people who were killed. That case, I don't think will go longer. The government can bring it down, and then the king can go in, or Telatin, they can solve it. But the other political, within local political, the former commissioner and the current commissioner who want to be taken out, and the issue of Pibura demonstration, people wanted to go back to Jongole and all this, we will still have that problem. The activities of rebel in that area is still very active. I think it's very complicated. If we more go to the tribal language we are talking, we will make it worse. That's my comment, Juana. I think I will stop here. But my question, the way you are seeing us to approach this now, to me, is more being approached in a tribal line, forgetting that the government were using this power to some other community, like I say, in case of Tony, the tanks were used, the Hammer vehicle, the Asila Kubar, they mute the citizen, they kill over 80-something, used South Sudan never talk about it. And when some general are rebel command in other side of aisle, their community will suffering. In case of Atar, their county was suffering. People were killed. Civilians were displaced. In case of Malone, when he tried to rebel, a lot of son were suffering in Juba, those who were in the army. Now we hear the sound of other community general. They are crying now, but the government let them go away with it. And there are some community are suffering. They will even to be killed, those who are facing the government. So what do you take of that? Thank you.
Should I answer him?
Yeah.
I think one thing that we have reached with you by consensus, the way you say when Malone tried, when Ator tried, some have been rewarded. That is what we call selective way of handling situation. That's what I'm saying. If we have a government, there's no need to be selective. There's a need to be uniform in addressing all issues. That's what I agree. In terms of the use of excessive power, yes. As I say that I've been in that area is a landlocked, that area doesn't have roads. But from my angle where I'm speaking from the ground is that we could have not reached to that level if we could have entertained the early warning dialogues, because brothers and sisters who are listening, I'm someone who traveled to these communities, who sit with these communities, who listen to these communities opinion. If we could have used early enough intervention, preventive strategy, we could not reach to this level. Even the politics that he's talking about, these politics are very clear surfacing. It's just absence of dialogue. It's a culture of bullying and imposing that makes things rough. But if we're to entertain dialogues, we could have suppressed this. And that's why I don't really like to say that it's a sentiment of
a tribal say, but what I'm saying is that we have chances to prevent before it occurs. But unfortunately, we undermine the opportunities to prevent until when to reach this stage. As he said in Tonch, I was there, I seen how much Dababat were abused and what type of Dababat, the model one that were being used. So that's why also we've been seriously condemning the excessive use of power when there's a crisis in Tonch between the youth and the SSPDF. So for me, what we need to do is let's change our political attitudes. Let us be genuine. Let us be honest. Let us be realistic. Let us try to believe that now time has come for us to act as a nation. We're not acting as a communities, as a tribes. As he said, Pochalla have so many complicated issues of politics. I've been there on the ground. Even within themselves, leave it before you equate them against Murle or you against them against others. Within themselves, there's a crisis going on, that they have their own discontented issues. And their politicians, as I've repeated myself several times in this statement, that their politicians were using violence as a ladder to power across the country. Even if you go to one of the Tonch, you come to realize some politicians who want to access power by creating that chaos. You go to one of the Twitch Mayardit and then Ngok, is also some politicians who want to use that for creating power, for accessing power, or to have influence, or to have attention of the president. The only thing that we should not reward the people who are using violence in order to access power. We're supposed to punish them and hold them accountable. But we're impressing people who are using violence as access to power. That's what it is. So for me, this really my take is that my opinion on his question of the opposition, I would like to repeat myself. If we don't change our attitudes, whatever agenda we're pursuing, our reality will be reflected. I'm not challenging the opposition. I'm challenging every political establishment. Which political establishment in this country have not broken into two since its initiation? We initiate movement, we keep calling them. And I remember when one time we were in the negotiation, I would like to say, we did this a testimony. I want to give this testimony. When we were in the negotiation, in the peace talks, as a civil society, some opposition speaks as if they're the best unique opposition. They're not going to be divided. I remember I challenged them in a public gallery. Some of them came and say, no, you have been bought by the government, that's why you're using that language. After some few weeks, they start splitting. And I come and ask them, what I told you that I don't believe that you're going to be a one body, because the political ideology you have is all about control of power, rather than really having a power to use it to deliver service to the people in a very inclusive manner. Tell me, when we start since 2013 until today, which group was established and they maintain solid as one as they are? All these groups are split up. Why splitting up? Because we're greed of power. Because we believe that without me in the party and in me represent the party in the government, there's no party, there's no government. That's some people start breaking out from you, say, no, to hell with you. We're establishing our own wing. Why do we have all these wings of the political parties? It's simply the political attitude we have is a political attitude of eating. It's not a political attitude of saving the nation. You can argue with me in several, whatever you have. That's why I don't believe that our political elites have political ideology for administering the country. They have a political ideology how to access power and to benefit themselves. Today, you'll argue today you're democratic, you're what? We need democracy. The money give you the state. And even some of you are there before in the government. We know your track record. It's simply out of power now. You tell me that your track record is clean. When in the system, we know you. When some of us want to access you at the time, we can't access you. You're so powerful because you are running state privileges. So for me, it's a change of political attitude to every South Sudanese. As long as you're not nationalist in your heart, as long as you want to use politics to favor your personal or group interests, you will never succeed. The reality will surface. That's how I like to describe that most of our political ideologies are chameleons in color. Today they're red, tomorrow they're blue, next tomorrow they're whatever, they keep on splitting. Why is divisions? Cliquism in terms of friendship, cliquism in terms of ethnic, cliquism in terms of grouping. That will never help us build a nation. So that's why what we need to do is that let us demonstrate political maturity. And political maturity is you have an identity, you remain within the party, you quarrel, you keep on doing that. You don't split up. But the more you keep splitting up, the more you weaken yourself. And that's what gives the incumbent to use that proxy way of splitting you in order to control power. So my message is that, as an activist, my appeal to all South Sudanese, let's address issues and let's separate issues from our egos. Let's separate issues from our ethnic dominance. I'm reading the social media. Most of our languages is of an ethnic dominance. The nation is not real in our hearts. It's a high time. Let's take responsibility. Let's show the nation that, yes, we are different tribes, but that's intended for beautiful purpose. That's intended for good purposes, not for bad purposes, that we want to use that differences to foster violence. We would have used that actually differences, that different identity, to show diversity and promote social cohesion. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last one, Isaac, the last one is Billy Luke. Billy Luke, you can go ahead.
Are you hearing him? I'm not getting him. Are you getting him?
Yes, go ahead, Abraham.
No.
It's not there.
Yeah, so Billy Luke. So if Bill Luke is not there, so we come to conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. So we reach the time. It's getting late in Juba. We need to close down the room. So Isaac, you can give Mr. Yakani a last word, and then you can close down the studio. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Abraham Adet in the clubhouse and all the viewers in both clubhouse and in Facebook and those in YouTube as well. Yakani, thank you so much for the time you have taken. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all those who ask their question. Their opinions are very important. We need to come out and make some discussion like this, like that. We will find out the solution. So we appreciate every single thing. We will catch up again to talk more about what is going on in the country as general. Thank you. May God bless all of you. Go in peace, and we will catch up again here in Lagos State Media. Thank
in Juba, Malatori, hey, in William, in Benti, wala kwaju, hey, wow, in William, in Malkal, wala pinyaram, in William.